I like to think of this passage as the call of Rebekah. There are so many stories of the calls of important members of the prophets and the leaders of Jesus' discipleship group. And this one is a little different, isn't it? It's kind of surprising, the turn of events. I think that perhaps all of them were acting in a way that is in line with a saying, a maxim that's attributed to St. Ignatius of Loyola. Pray as if everything depends on God, and work as if everything depends on you. It's sort of a balancing of both sides of our life in faith. Praying fervently, but also doing our part. Well, I want to recommend to you a love story, a new movie that just came out called Solo Mio. And it's about people finding love a little bit later in life. It's produced by Angel Studios, which is a Christian group, and it's starring Kevin James. He was from the TV show King of Queens. And Italian actress Nicole Grimaldo. There's also tenor Andrea Bocelli, who plays the uncle of the main character, the woman named Gia. And Allison Hannity from Buffy the Vampire Slayer is also in the movie. So this is a great story because the main character is an American art teacher of elementary students, Matt Taylor. And he proposed to his fiancée. And he's like, the wedding will be in Rome. And she says yes. And so they get there and they're at the church and everybody's waiting. And she leaves him at the altar. Oh no, what's going to happen? Well, it's very dramatic. But he ends up meeting a nice young woman at the cafe, Gia. And she actually has a kind heart, and she's running the cafe, and she helps him because she saw that his wallet was taken by some kids pickpocketing. She kind of rescues him. A reversal of the damsel in distress, right? And long story short, it's a great movie and really encouraging. And it's very subtle in its little hints of faith, like the concierge who's helping him at the hotel says, I'm praying for you. And one of the characters that he meets on this honeymoon package that he cannot get out of because it's all prepaid in advance, he has a really good heart, and he's like encouraging him, and he makes friends with the other people on the tour. And anyhow, it's a great story. I highly recommend it, and it's just came out right before Valentine's. So I think you'll like it. It made me think about the good heart of this character, Gia. She was really concerned about her customers, and she saw that he was struggling, and she worked hard to help him, and she kind of ended up becoming an important person in his life. And we see that in this story, the character of Rebekah is a very strong young lady as well. So we picked up this story where the servant of Abraham was praying. And the story is kind of long because there's like the preview and then the event and then the telling of it to Rebekah's father and brother. And so what has happened in the time that has gone by? Well, just briefly, after Isaac came back with Abraham from their journey into the wilderness, when he was bound and they realized that he did not have to be sacrificed, Isaac lived for another kind of quiet time of his life. There were not any other major events happening. And the big thing that did happen was that his mother, Sarah, died. And that was really sad. And so he was like 37 when this happened. And his dad bought a field that had a cave in it, the field and the cave of Machpelah. And so that's where she was buried. And 3 years went by, and then he was 40. And, his father Abraham was like, you know what? I don't think Isaac is going to go out there and find a wife for himself. I think I need to get an arranged marriage. And so he brought in his most trusted servant. I would say this guy was the manager of his staff. And he's like, you're good with people. I'm counting on you. I don't want you to get a Canaanite local girl. I need you to go all the way back to my hometown. And I want you to find someone from among our relatives who will have the same kind of culture that I'm used to, that I feel comfortable with. And so I looked it up. This is like a major journey. He was like, all right, I need you to take 10 servants, load up the camels. I need you to take a lot of presents. I'm talking gold, silver, fancy ornaments, fancy clothes. We want to outfit the bride. We want to convince her parents that this is a good idea. We need to make a really impressive show. And it's going to take about 3 weeks by camel to go all the way there. So where he went was way back up in Paddan Aram, near the Tigris and Euphrates. So it was a journey. And finally, he was like, yeah, but what if the girl doesn't want to go with me? Just trying to convince someone to get married without meeting the groom might be a tough one. And Abraham said, that's okay, but I believe that God is going to make it happen. He was trusting God. So Abraham was praying. And I think Isaac was praying a lot too. It says later he was out in the field thinking, and I think that was the Bible's way of saying he was wondering what was going to happen. So finally he gets to the place and he goes to the well. It's the evening, the time when the young ladies would go get the water. Now, similar to Gia in the movie, Rebekah was very young and vigorous and healthy. She was able to carry the water jar, and not only did she answer the prayer, he prayed that God would help him meet a nice young lady who would be willing to give him water, but also water for the 10 camels. And sure enough, that's exactly what she did. Oh, how wonderful. The guy was so relieved and thankful. So he produced the engagement ring, so to speak. And it was a nose ring, very beautifully made, and 2 bracelets, like armbands, like that they wore back in the day. And I would love to research some pictures of what these were like. You've probably seen like in ancient Greek and Roman collections, and I would love to go to that new museum in Cairo, that Egypt museum. I think that would be amazing. But to see the gold work on these armbands, the bracelets, and the ring. So I looked it up, and apparently the amount of grams of gold are like twice as much as a typical wedding ring. And so he gave that to her, and it probably was very finely worked and beautiful. And then not just one bracelet, but a pair, matching pair. And the amount of gold in those is like a really thick, heavy bracelet. And I looked up a similar amount of the same weight, and you could buy a men's gold Figaro bracelet for about $36,000 today. So he was really trying to be as impressive as he could, because he was really trying to convince them, sight unseen, come with me. My master is very wealthy. He has a nice young son who's 40. You're going to really love this whole situation, right? So sure enough, she was able-bodied. She watered him, gave water for him, watered for the camels, and she ran back to the house. And as soon as her brother saw all the jewelry and heard her talking about it, he was like, okay, something is really unusual is happening. But thankfully, the parents said yes. They said, okay, tell us the whole story. So the servant laid it out all before them. And then, sure enough, they agreed. Now, this is really remarkable. In a previous church, we did a whole Bible study on this, about what this tells us about Rebekah, being in a wealthy home, they had enough guest rooms and stables for the 10 camels and the servant and the 10 servants. And they entertained him and everybody agreed over dinner. This was a good plan. Maybe she was a little bit bored and she was tired of hanging out and she was just ready to go off on this adventure to this other country and meet her new husband. The good thing that I think really was the clincher for all of them was that they were family. They were part of the extended family, as it explained. Okay, so the other thing that's really interesting to note is that her family loved her. And after they slept on it the next day, the mom and the brother were like, hey, wait, can you just let her stay for another 10 days or 2 weeks just before she has to go away and leave? Because they realized, she might not ever come back. It's a really long journey. And the servant said, actually, I'm just so grateful that this worked out. Can we just leave now? And so all of the presents being exchanged, her nurse went with her. I think she was probably like 16 to 20 years old, and her maids. And I think they had room on those camels because the presents had been given to her family, and now the maids could go on the camels back with them. So sure enough, as they made their way, finally, from a distance, she saw Isaac in the field. And before she left, they prayed that God would bless her and make her the mother of many. And I wonder how she felt when she saw him, because immediately she jumped off of the camel. It shows her energy and her excitement about this future that God opened up for her. And when she found out it was him, she put her veil back on because she wasn't wearing it when she was traveling. She got very formal and met him. And I love the way the Bible says that he took her to his mother Sarah's tent. And that's where they celebrated the wedding. And he loved her. And he was comforted after the death of his mother. And that was the beginning of their married life together. Wow, so beautiful. And we think about this, how God worked everything together at just the right time and just the right way. The servant didn't have to ask several different young ladies. It was the very one. God led him to the right person. And Rebekah herself was ready and willing and receptive to this idea. And I love how they asked for sure what she wanted. They gave her the option of saying, yeah, I'm a little nervous. I just want to hang out here with you guys for another couple weeks. But she said, no, I really want to go. And that was it. She said, I do want to go. So beautiful. Well, God provided in amazing ways. And as we think about this, we may pray about the situations in our life. We're thinking about this journey in the desert that the servant made and that Rebekah made with the whole retinue of people. And Jesus himself spent some time in the desert, and he also was praying that God would provide him, that God would be with him in whatever lay ahead. And he faced temptations that we frequently talk about in Lent, because now we're in the season of Lent, and we ask that God would help us to be people who are good-hearted, like the young lady in the movie. Help us to work hard. If it's showing hospitality to a stranger, if it's giving our best in the work that we have to do, and then praying for God to guide us. I would say that in this whole situation, we see that God ends up bringing blessing, that the joy that she felt in being chosen as the bride ended up being rewarded because Isaac loved her. And so they were able to begin a whole new chapter, the willingness to trust in God and God faithfully blessing their efforts to make a new beginning. I think it's lovely. It's really special. And this is like the pivotal thing that was leading us from the whole promises of God to Abraham and Sarah, moving on to Isaac, to find a bride and to be able to begin, hopefully, what will be the next chapter and the next generation of God's faithfulness. And isn't it beautiful how all the sides of the family were seeking God's will in it? And they said, clearly, we can't deny. Even the brother said, God made this happen. We won't stand in the way of God's will. As we think about our journey in the desert, it's sort of a metaphorical journey of Lent, where we seek to be in solidarity with Jesus, who fasted and prayed, who sought God's will in his life, and was willing to follow in faith, even though it was going to be difficult. May we be thinking about how God would have us. Sometimes people give up something in Lent, like chocolate or something that they enjoy as a frivolous thing we need to set aside. And other times people take on a discipline in Lent, adding more Bible study or journaling or prayer times in their life. Or sometimes we try to say, I'm going to be really intentional and mindful about what I say and how I respond to others. Or I'm going to add into my life a new book that will help me to stay on track with my faith. Other people think about giving more generously, donations to philanthropy and supporting the church as a weekly or monthly gift to support the ministries reaching others in need. In any way that we feel that God is guiding us, may we trust God and pray for his will in our life and do our part of the work so that we can help fulfill what he has that will bring blessings not only to us, but to others as well. Amen.